This is the 22nd of August, 2009. We have a visitor here in the museum. She's going to tell us who she is, and then she's got some stories about old-time days in Blue Rapids, Kansas to tell us.
Okay. My name now is Sister Teresa Rigel, R-I-G-E-L. And before I got the name Teresa, I was Gladys Marie. That was years and years ago. And I was born, I think it was near Palmer or Barnes, May 5th, 1923. And our parents lived on a farm there at Palmer. And then later they moved to a farm near Cleburne. But they didn't stay there too long because, they were moved then to my grandfather's, one of his farms, and that was near Waterville. And I don't recall the year exactly, but we moved to near Blue Rapids on a farm.
Were you in school during the time you were in Cleburne? Or were you littler than that?
No. Well, in Cleburne, I did go to school there, the lower grades. And then by the time we reached up here south of town, I went to a country school, Game Fork, I think it was called, Game Fork School. And it was about a mile and a half from our home out in the country. So we walked, and at that time it seemed like a long, long way, but it was only a mile and a half, and it's good exercise. And I lived there with, of course, with my parents, and then through the years, I'm the oldest of the family, but then my sister next to me was born. I can't recall the year right now. And Kenneth was born there on the farm, and then my youngest sister, Dorothy. So we were 4 children. And my mother, Anna Marie Musel, Sedovy. And Dad is Emil Rigel. And while we were living on the farm, we didn't have too large a farm, but even at that time, Dad had been in the World War I, and his health was not good, so it was hard for him to farm, but he did the best he could with help. And
you don't know what his injuries were?
He had a respiratory problem. I don't think he had any injuries. At least he walked.
They were using gas, weren't they, in World War I?
I think it was.
Isn't that one of the things?
I think that's what it was. Yes. He was over in Europe and some of the battles that went over there. But they did the best they could with the farm. And so I went to this little country school, and when I graduated, I really wanted to go to high school. But at that time, not too many people were going on to high school, especially if it was a distance.
So you were when you decided to go to high school?
Well, I really wanted to go to high school, so at first, and I came here to Blue Rapids, and it seemed a long distance. I drove with, I think his name was Strader, Or anyway, I did come to high school here, but it's just too much to come every day, drive in. So at that time, I don't know how I heard of her, but Anna Linhart had a sort of a hotel over here on the corner. You probably remember it anyway. And so I went over there and lived with Anna Linhart, and she took in people that didn't have much money as boarders, and I helped with the work. And at that time, while I was going to high school, I was helping them out in the library, part-time and so on. And I really liked library work in the Rapids High School. And I wanted to be a librarian when I graduated, but I checked out the tuition fees, like in Emporia, Kansas and so on, and they were sky high to me. So Anna Linhart wanted me to be a nurse. She was a nurse herself, and so she encouraged me to go to Manhattan, Kansas, to St. Mary's Hospital there, and she offered to pay my tuition down, I think it's $50 to go to St. Mary's in Manhattan. Now the other thing at that time, Anna was a devout Catholic, and she prayed the rosary every evening, and she listened to Archbishop Sheen, Bishop Sheen at the time, and I was a devout Methodist. I went to the Methodist church here, and I knew the minister, and I talked with him about being a missionary to India, because I was excited about this, and he didn't pay too much attention to me. Probably thought I was a high school kid, talking about this. And I was serious about being a missionary. But Anna did encourage me to go down to Manhattan, and finally I did, because that was about the only thing I could do. And I got into nurses training, and I met the sisters down there. I met Sister Mary Luke Bowker, and I was impressed by the group there, and I got along very well in nursing, although it wasn't my first desire by any means. And I lived with the student nurses, because we lived together in a little setting there. And I had relatives too in Manhattan, so that was good. I had Mussels were there, and they were relatives of mine. And so that worked out well. And then while I was in Manhattan, I got acquainted with the chaplain of the hospital, and I saw an ad in the paper about Catholicism, being a Catholic, and it was the Knights of Columbus. Well, I never heard of the Knights of Columbus before, but I sent the ad in, it was free, and I took this course on what the faith of Catholicism was all about. And then at the conclusion of that, I decided I think I'd be a Catholic. I believed in it, and so I told the chaplain, and he said I had excellent preparation for it from this correspondent course that Knights of Columbus had. And later in life, I wrote this up and got $20 for it from a magazine, Catholic Digest. So, but then I became a Catholic, and then I like the sisters very much, and I was impressed with their way of life and their devotion to God and so on. So I asked or talked about being a sister of St. Joseph in Concordia. I had also contacted a missionary group that had missions in India, but then I decided that I would stay with the Sisters of St. Joseph. And the administrator of the hospital paid the little entrance fee, which I had because I didn't have any, but I did. When I became a Catholic, then I had to be a Catholic a couple of years before I could enter the convent. And I suppose they have reasons for that. I don't think they do it anymore. No. But at that time, so I waited 2 years, and I was an RN and worked a while in Manhattan. And then when the time was over, I entered the convent in Concordia, Kansas. Now, my dad, he didn't mind. It's okay. Neither of my parents were Catholic. In fact, none of my relatives were. But my mother really opposed this move I was making, which is understandable too. Like, I think my mother belonged to it's a church that started out there on, it's down the road. I don't know if it's still there or not. It's Presbyterian church.
The Czech Presbyterian,
yes,
maybe.
Czech Presbyterian. Mm-hmm. And of course we were Czechs, and I couldn't even speak English when I started to grade school, but I did learn English. Since 1944, so I don't have the dates here, but I didn't know much about the convent life. I entered from Manhattan and being a nurse and so on. And it was a hard adjustment for a while because it was so different, and especially I think to the fact that I was a convert to Catholicism. The other people that entered the convent were more like from Western Kansas, where they were Catholics for a long time. So
Russian, German
yeah,
Russians.
German Russian. And so, but I got along okay. And then when
I'm interested in what you wore, what your garb was.
yeah, we had the sister's garb, and that lasted until the Second Vatican Council. And gosh, I don't even know the date on that, but then that's what people began to change. First it was just modified garb, and then more and more just went to.
Can you describe what you wore?
Oh yes, we had a veil, and for a while we had a band up here, and had kind of a garb that we wore around our face and so on, and long.
Was it always
braids.
black?
Black. Everything was black. Black shoes, black hose.
Was your band white up
yeah,
here?
Yeah, it was white. And our veils. When we first started, like with novices, we wore white veils for a year, and then after we took vows, then we got a black veil. That's what we wore. But I went into nursing, and as a nurse, we wore white, same kind of garb, but everything was white. And so when I finished a year, 2 years at Concordia, the mother house, my first mission was St. Anthony's Hospital, Sabetha, Kansas. And I like Sabetha very much, and the people there. And I got along quite well. In fact, I got along well with the student nurses, and a student made like a director of nurses, along with some of my other little jobs in the hospital.
Did you work emergency room or maternity or everything?
Everything. In a little hospital, you work where you're needed. And said I was working in Sabetha, Kansas.
And we were talking about working in all the departments since it was a small.
And then, well, I don't remember how long I stayed in Sabetha. I got along okay there, though. And then,
Did you live there?
yes,
And was there
we had a home right next to it where the sisters lived. They ran the hospital there. So, and I don't know the time, but since I was doing quite well with student nurses, I gradually went from bedside nursing supervision to being with the director of nurses. And then after that, I went on for more higher education and so on. I did, this kind of relates here back to Blue Rapids. My father died at the Veterans Hospital at Lincoln, Nebraska. But as the years went by, my mother's health deteriorated. And she had moved here to Blue Rapids. And I came back from where I was working and took care of her, and I stayed with her until she passed away. And that was, I think, a good time for me to go back over some of my past history and see people that I had lost track of and so on. And I value that time, of course, and spending time with her was good too. She was so grateful I was able to come and stay with her, and she didn't have to go to a nursing home or anything like that. Of course, I was a nurse, so
Had your dad passed by then? Was he gone already? Your dad?
You mean what?
Was he still alive when you were caring for your mom?
My father? No, he had passed away
Yep.
some years back. But since he had been sick for so long and had been to the Veterans Hospital for care, and so that was something that wasn't a surprise. But my mother's death was rather quick when she finally passed away. And it was a good time in getting back to my past life and so on. When I was here too, before she was too ill, I worked in Marysville at one of the nursing homes for a while. That was interesting too. And I don't think I worked around here in Blue Rapids. No, I drove back and forth from Marysville.
And where was your mom living at that time?
Let's see. No, I think she was living, I can't remember where. Oh, we lived over a block or so from here, I think, she lived here in Blue Rapids too. Yeah. There's a white house on the corner but right next to Mrs. Carney. And then that house was torn down later because it had to be. That was their home. Yeah. So that was a good, like I say, it was good for me to get back here and to sort of bring back the memories and get acquainted with my relatives and so on.
Was the lady at the hotel still over here at that time?
I don't think so. No, I don't remember when that hotel
I
was
don't
torn
either.
down. But I don't even when she passed away. But that was, I think about that sometimes because since then I've had different experiences with homeless people. When I used to come back from the reservation in summertime, because I was in the school system up there, I worked in Junction City. They had a homeless shelter called Open Door. It's still there. And so I worked in a homeless shelter. And I thought about that. That was another experience with homeless people.
Mm-hmm. You didn't have to go to India to find them, did you? They were right here.
No, there were people here.
Do you want to talk about your, when did you go to the reservation? Was this after your mom, after you'd been here with your mom?
I'm not sure about the date, because I went there, and then sometimes I'd come back and then return to the reservation. So I don't have those dates here. Mm-hmm. It was, I really liked it. Like I said, I didn't know I'd fit in with the Indian people, the Ogallala Sioux, and I got along very well there with them.
And you were, what did you do with the school system? Were you
I was the librarian in Red Cloud Indian School, the high school. And then because I was also a nurse, I kept my RN up for Nebraska and South Dakota and Kansas. So when there were emergencies, I helped take care of some of those medical emergencies. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Did you collect things while you were there? Do you have Indian artifacts or?
No. There certainly were plenty around, but I wasn't much of a collector, you know. But,
okay, we were on the Indian reservation, and yeah.
So I stayed up there, I would say about maybe 20 years, so it's a long time. Yeah. And usually I came back in summertime here, not here, but to Concordia or someplace in the work ring.
Oh.
That time too, because and some summers I'd come back and work. We had a children's home in Salina, Kansas, and this was operated by the Diocese of Salina, the Catholic Charities, and so I used to work or help out at the children's home. There were about, maybe 4 sisters living there, and we had quite a few children. Well, it didn't, something had happened that they had to have a place to live. Mm-hmm. And then, this is a side line, I guess, of the program. After a number of years, they closed that children's home because the tendency of handling abused children or children who have no homes is now putting them in foster care. That doesn't always work out, really. And in a way, I think we have more stability with that children's home. But you can see that my life has been with homeless people that's okay. I get along with them. So.
Did you feel hopeful about the Native Americans when you were up there, or was it just kind of a despair of the way they were living?
Well, actually, things do not change too much with the Ogallala Sioux, or I would say that might even be in general with them Native Americans. The poverty is still great. But people, they've tried to help, and I don't know. It's very hard to predict what will happen. But there's still other problems of alcoholism, suicides, and I don't know. And then some of those high school people got scholarships to Creighton and Omaha, Nebraska, and so on. And they'd go on to college, and some go of it, but others came back to the reservation.
Do you have any contact with anybody that was a student up there?
Not with the students, although I felt when I was working up there that I was liked and so on. I got along well with them. But that's been a number of years, so I do keep in contact with some, one teacher has been there a long time. She lives in Hot Springs now. I still hear from her. And then number of summers, I didn't go up this year, but number of summers I've gone back to the reservation, and it's been good too. See what's going on. And they do get funding, and they build on to the high school, and so I think as far as Red Cloud Indian School is concerned, that they've done very well. They are doing well. But whether or not the conditions that's hard to know.
Yeah.
I think that's true of a lot of our poor systems. And for one summer, I helped out in Selma, Alabama. And near Selma is a small place. I worked in the library there. See a lot of the same,
Same problems, same conditions.
Yeah, just
Last time I saw you to talk with you is when you came across up into my yard, and I looked at you and I says, Gladys? And you says, uh-huh. And you was in your
Havoc.
habit.
Garby.
But I still called you Gladys.
Oh, sure.
And it was always Gladys to me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very true. Like I have my cousins, my relatives, so on. All call me, and I always go by my name Gladys because that's the way they.
Did you recognize your picture in that school picture?
I didn't look at it.
You didn't.
Yeah.
I showed them who you were in there.
Yeah.
So we used to come across the way.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what it was, but it had something to do with makeup up in your attic, not attic, but upstairs. But that's as far as I can remember. Now, I think are you a little bit older than I am?
I probably am.
Maybe you were more Alvis's age?
I am 86 now. I was born in 1923. When were you born?
I was born in 25. My brother was born in 23, so yeah, you were. And you also, we traveled back and forth and played.
Oh yeah, we were close,
I don't remember the distance between the two, and I can't get down there to that place because the road has changed down there at that edge. The road that went down to where you lived, I think is still there, but then it goes off another direction. And then I can come in and go in down to where where George Dials used to live.
Yes.
But the road between George Dials and Fred Dials is gone. So
It's changed. Yeah. That's like I think they tore down that school we used to go to. I don't remember. Did they tear that down?
I don't know. I always went to Cleveland. I didn't go
Oh,
to.
you didn't.
Now, what school was it?
Oh, we went to country school for a while.
Was it north of you, where you lived, or?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. But we would go down and the road that went up just north of Cleveland. There was a road that went north, and I don't know for sure if you was home or what, or if you had moved. I don't know. We were walking home one day. Dad was supposed to pick us up. He didn't. So we walked home with the white breads.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And we walked up there, and we walked up that road to where their home was, because they had baby lambs. And we went up and saw the baby lambs. We got in a little bit of trouble. So, well, what do you remember about down there?
Not very much, no.
Now, how old were you when they moved? Do you know?
I don't remember.
See, my folks lived there, and then they moved across the river, and then they moved back over to the house there. So they lived there twice, and that's where we lived when the tornado hit Washington, Kansas.
Oh.
And there was some kind of a storm that went through there and took the shingles off the one side of the barn. So.
I think a couple of weeks ago, Washington, Kansas was hit by a storm again.
Could be, but they wasn't hit by
much,
that.
but no.
Not by that, but because we went and saw that, and they had it. A lot of the churches was torn down, at least the ones that I saw, and I can remember that. But so.
Those storms, they were something, they are something. Yeah.
As I was telling Kenny, I knew your folks, I knew you, and I knew Oma. I didn't know Kenny and Dorothy.
Dorothy,
But I started school with Elaine. And I think she's gone now, isn't she? And same way with Lyle.
Yeah, Lyle.
And see, my dad was in service with Freddie. I don't know if they was in the same department in the Army or not, I don't know. But they were in at the same time. So. And I was talking to the girls, and I can remember Netson's and the post office and Freddie's. There was a big stone. It was all I can remember now of it being, it must have been burned or something on the corner. But the bank was there, and I didn't remember who owned the grocery store. Do you remember?
No, I don't. I remember there was a grocery store there.
It was called People's Grocery Store, but beyond that, I couldn't tell you. And it was a wrap around the bank, more or less. But that's as far as I knew. And I thought they had furniture in the east part and the groceries in the west part.
Could be.
But beyond that, and then across the street to the east was like Pogue's Creamery or what it was. They took in chickens, they took in cream and all that.
Well, you have a fantastic memory.
And then also there was kind of like a hardware store there too, on the south side. Greenie Guard or something like that owned it. I can't pull it. And then north of that was the store, and that's where Samuelson's had. And they had, in that store, they had one of these cages that you put money in, and it went upstairs and came back down. I remember that because I thought that was something. And then north of that, I don't know if there were spaces in between, but north of that was a garage. And I don't remember who owned it for sure. If it was to be owned or not, I don't know. And then north of that was a little lean-to, and Shorty, he had the store, the one of the restaurants out at the east edge of west edge of Marysville. What I mean, or the rest on.
Wasn't a Herolic.
Could have been.
Herolic.
Should have been Shorty.
Shorty Herolic?
I don't remember. But anyway, he had a little lean-to. It was a beer joint, but they had hamburgers in there. But that's as far as I know. And then north of that was M.B. White's, where Mrs. White lived. Mrs. White and Lola and Opal lived there. But Sini as we always call him, MB, lived across the bridge, and he had that
something.
filling station. So, yeah, I can remember all that just plain.
Yeah, well, you probably walked around and
No, I didn't. I don't know why. I don't know why I remember all that.
must
I was wondering that too. You didn't get to go wander the town unsupervised
No.
with your
No,
friends?
When you're in the first and second grade, you didn't roam around.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you lived in the country, you didn't come
You
in
didn't
that
come
often.
to town that often?
No. And then going north out of town, across from where Whites lived, there was I can't pull his name out, he could have been Vilander. He was a bachelor and he lived with his mother, and he's the one that run the filling station, catty corner across from his house.
This
And
is up the road that would come up to Blue Rapids?
Mm-hmm. And then north of that was a hotel, and it was run by, can't pull it out now, but then there was a Bloomquist. Or something like that. But Netsons lived up along there, and Netsons lived, well, relation to my dad, and I would go with my grandma down across the little valley, the creek, up there for coffee when I stayed there.
And is that Alice Netson? Was she the child?
Alice Netson, yes, Alice Netson would have been Alice Netson would have been the cousin. This was Leonard Netson.
Okay.
And Leonard and Alan Netson had the grocery store. And Alan Netson was Walter and Alice Netson's dad.
Okay.
And Leonard Netson had Elaine. And Elaine married a schoolmate while he was quite a little bit younger from Randolph. Then on up the road, there was an S.L. Johnson, no relation, and S.L.'s son, Con, married my aunt, Florence, and they lived in Clay Center. Then up around the turn that went up the hill from there, Agnes, was there an Osdell? Agnes, they lived up here where Rigels live now. And they had a girl that, if she'd have been living today, she would have went to special ed. But back then, they put them in closets. They didn't do anything. And that's what I remember.
Well,
But
you
all
sure
that- all
remember.
that-
Wow, that's wonderful.
We just spent 2 hours at her house and she didn't stop one single time because we didn't have the interruptions and her memory just goes.
That's
That's
fantastic.
incredible.
Well, across from you, where Phelan's lived.
Oh, yeah, Phelan.
And then when they moved
Phelan's.
off, V.E. Johnson lived there.
Yeah.
And then up the road was Duchek's,
Now, are you going on the road toward the grade school now?
going north of the grade school, clear on north.
Okay,
Clear up
up at the
past,
Dial property up around in there.
past where she used to live, going north of that. Where Duchek's lived, Joe Duchek, and that's where Dickie Blasky lives now. So,
Isn't that something?
well, you see, my grandparents lived in Cleburne, and my other grandparents lived just south of Irving, so we traveled that
Oh,
road.
yes, sure.
So, and like I was telling you, down there where remember Fritz Lindblom's? They lived down there where the road went north up toward Whitebreads. They lived in that big house down just close to Springside, or Spring Creek.
Now, both those towns, Irving, Cleburne.
Yeah, they're gone. So, and like I was telling the girls, Fritz Lindblom's barn burnt, and in it was a new Model T.
Oh, that hurt.
And that Model T was my dad's.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
but you don't remember a lot of that?
No, I must have been pretty little or something.
Well, I was little too.
It's my excuse. No, I don't remember that.
I remember the land up there, the houses and stuff was up high, and you went over and you went down just like a shelf.
Yeah.
And there was fields down below. So when the river got out, you didn't have to worry about the houses because they was clear up on the shelf.
Well, that was smart.
So, but no, there's a lot of things that I can remember just like I close my eyes and I can see it. I have no idea why.
It's a gift. It's a gift.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Just like I remember her mother, Pat's mother, knew me when I was this size. That's as far as I know right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's.
Well, I'm glad to have you two ladies on the same tape together. That's great. That's great.
Her mother, when we moved to town, her mother used to babysit with our kids when we decided to go square dancing.
Oh, well.
Oh.
That was, well, we'd put the kids to bed, except the older ones. And they were old enough to get ready for bed themselves. So probably a lot of the babysitters never even saw the babies because they were in bed.
Asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, they
And
were
where did
taught-
her mother live?
Their mother lived just across from the Baptist church.
Which
You-
direction?
What?
Which direction? Across? Which
Across
way?
to the east.
Okay.
It has a cave there now.
Oh,
you can see
the
that.
Rigel house stood there
Uh-huh.
for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
sure.
where they lived when they babysit.
Okay.
Where she babysit for.
Okay.
Your dad was gone by then.
Yeah.
So, but your dad was in service too, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he knew.
Yeah. In fact, he, like I said, he died in Lincoln. He had some type of something from what was.
Well, I wondered if it was the mustard gas that
I
they
think it
used in
was
World War
something
One. He had
like
lung
that,
problems
yeah,
all of
'cause
his life when he got
been
back.
sick all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an uncle that died too, Springer, that died too.
Where you going?
No, we're just